So, How to Get Anyone to Like You by David J. Lieberman. It was a very interesting book. I think he said there are essentially 5 reasons or 5 ways to get someone to like you. I can't remember 3 of them, but the 2 of them that I remember is basically uh, he talks about one being time and the other being having similar interests, right? So essentially, what he says is that the more time we spend with someone, the more we get to like them, assuming we don't really, like initially, that we don't really hate them. And there are even some other books that I had mentioned, which you have to go through. I won't mention which one, but it talks about how to condense certain experiences to give the illusion that time has passed on faster between the two of you. If you've read the book, you'll know what I'm talking about. But anyway, uh, with time, like if you'll notice, for example, like for me, for example, in high school, I was desk mates with a lot of people, okay? Because I was in the same school for 11 years. But I mean, even if you're not in the same school for 11 years, obviously anyone who's gone to school has desk mates, right? So I would say a large chunk of my friends were actually my desk mates, and 2 of them were very unlikely. Like, I don't think, in hindsight, given the knowledge from this book, if we hadn't been desk mates, I don't think we'd have been friends. One of them was actually my computer mates. Like, we'd have lessons in the computer lab. I know some of you are shocked that, wow, they have computer labs in Nairobi. Yeah, so I was lesson in the computer lab, and we got organized by our surnames. So there's one person who I used to sit next to in the computer lab, and we only had computers like maybe once or twice a week. But that's literally how I became friends with someone who was my best friend for many years. But I mean, eventually we went different ways, like, different school, or not schools, but anyway, kind of drifted apart. But that was mainly like the time principle, because if some of you are familiar with MBTI, if somehow in the magic uh, of time, like between these videos, you've been able to actually read some of these books. He was an ESFP and I was an INTP, so we literally have only one letter in common, right? So yeah, but we became like best friends. My other best friend was an INTJ at the time. So, and the other person who kind of we became friends was an ENFJ, and there was another ENFJ as well. So, yeah, basically, desk mates is one powerful example that essentially just spending enough time with someone is a good way to get to know them, right? So if you like someone and you're able to spend enough time with them, then you'll most likely end up as friends. The other thing which you talked about was similar interests. So that's the thing with these 5 distinct ways of getting someone to like you or getting to know someone. They're distinct in the sense they don't overlap. So another one is similar interests. So with this friend that I mentioned, we didn't have many similar interests besides girls. We didn't have, and kind of PlayStation. Well, he had an Xbox, but still. But with similar interests, again, you know, someone who I met in high school who was almost a carbon copy of me, but smarter, learned a lot from them. And if you go to like, depends on what you're into. If you go to like a comic convention, or if you trying to think of other examples, basically similar interests are a fantastic way to get to know someone. So I think the website meetups.com, where you can meet people in groups, not for dating, but just in groups of people. I think when you have that common interest, it's going to be a lot easier to socialize with someone. So there can be someone who you only know for like 2 months, but you feel closer to to them than the person you know for 2 years. You've known for 2 years, simply because you guys have really similar interests. Like his book was really trying to dispute the fact that people claim that opposites attract. They only do in crutch relationships. If you study socionics, which is MBTI, but it has the added benefit of showing the relationship between each type in a grid format. It says some relationships are crutch relationships, where like someone is really untidy and someone is really neat, so they link up, you know. So basically, finding someone who's the exact opposite of you, it's kind of a crutch relationship, and it's not really the healthiest relationship that exists. But outside of crutch relationships, it's usually similar interests that are crucial to forming bonds. So I would recommend the book, Get Anyone to Like You. It's called something like that. Maybe not How to, but Get Anyone to Like You. Very good book. David J. Lieberman writes a lot of interesting books on just people, right? Not really self-help, but people, right? Very interesting books. Top seven authors for sure. I think I mentioned that. Or was that about Brian Tracy? Yeah. How to Talk to Anyone by Leil Lowndes. She's very popular. She even had this interview, I think, and she talks about how to talk to people. 92 tips and tricks. So if you have problems starting conversations with people, this is a good book. It didn't help that much, but there's some things, there's some concepts where you're like, that's an intriguing concept, or this could make sense. This could make a lot of sense in certain contexts. So, like, for example, she says you should always try and be like the first person at an event, so you can literally talk to everyone that walks in, right? Rather than being the last person and everyone is already talking to someone. So I'm like, that actually makes a lot of sense. So yeah, when you're actually early to events, you will end up talking to the most people, right? Because if you really think about it, like some people come midway through events and you're like, wow, you've missed out on talking on half of the people. Some people have left midway, right? So that's an interesting concept. I I can't remember the rest of the 92 tips and tricks, but as I said, it's probably subconscious. It's one of those things which you've internalized it and you do it subconsciously without realizing that, oh, it's because I read it in that book. Instant analysis, can't remember, but as I said, probably to do with probably to do with reading people. I mean, there's so many there's so many books on reading people. It's like, what am I reading? Am I reading the books or am I reading the people? Mind control, language patterns. I think that one was mainly about marketing, though. I'm not necessarily sure it was about. I'm not necessarily sure it was about mind control in and of itself, because there's no such thing as mind control. At least that's what they want you to think. I can't remember one of the principles, but it was basically trying to say that hype works. Like if you hype something up, then it works. Hype is a controversial thing. Like sometimes if they hype up something too much, then it it backfires. But other times when they do hype up things, it works. So I think the way I think about it is like celebrities, for example. Like, don't get me wrong, certain celebrities are attractive, like, Nicki Minaj, Beyonce, Kim Kardashian. But you have to admit there's a lot of hype behind them in the sense that if you look on Pinterest or on Google, there are a lot of beautiful women, right? A lot of beautiful women who look better than like Beyonce or Nicki Minaj or Kim Kardashian, but because they're not famous, no one really knows them or no one really likes them as much, right? Like there's one girl called Dolly Castro on Instagram. She's an Instagram model. I'm telling you, that body is literally the most perfect body I have ever seen in the world. I mean, her face, I don't know if her face is better than others, but her body definitely is. So it was explaining something about hype. It's one of the books I don't know if I finished. If I reread it, it's probably like at the time, yeah, there was something interesting. It's just I don't remember what exactly it was that they said. But yeah, and I remember I think another time, another thing I'd read in that subliminal book is about simplicity. And it's part of the reason people love Apple products is the simplicity. It's just iPhone, iPad, iMac, and MacBook, right? These HP laptops or these Dell laptops, they have these ridiculous serial numbers, the Dell dash ZH1P hash star, like products with the ridiculous naming ranges. So psychologically, if you simplify your product range, right? Like think about how many Samsung phones there are. Like there's so many I can't even tell. I used to think like the Samsung Galaxy notebook was good, but they came out with a cheap version, which they also call the Galaxy. I think it's the Galaxy A2 or something like that. So it's very confusing. Like I told you, I'm a very good window shopper. So any phone I buy based on specifications. I don't buy it based on advertisements and I don't buy it based on hype. But a lot of people aren't like that. A lot of people will actually just want something simple. So, like with Apple, for example, they're like, I want something high quality, I want something expensive, and I want something simple. I don't want to dig around. So that's why they pick Apple, right? And it's now the most valued company in the world. Personally, I'm more of an Android fan because I actually did have an iPhone. I had the iPhone 3G, but you couldn't remove the SIM card easily because back in those days we had those simpler phones that you could open the back. I had an Ideos, Huawei Ideos, very, very simple phone. That was my previous phone before the iPhone 3G. So you could remove the back, exchange SIMs. I was really young. So, when you go to the club and your phone dies and you need to call a taxi or you need to call a ride home or you need to call your friends because you have no clue where the hell they are, you'd find one friend and you'd swap the SIM. You're like, does your phone have battery? Because you don't know the number, right? You don't know the number. So you just find someone and you swap the SIM card, you power up the phone, and then you're good to go. And then, back in the day, because I'm a 90s kid, right? I'm old enough to remember when not all chargers were the same. But I think at some point, like maybe 2009, 2010, Android decided all chargers are going to be the same. But the iPhone 3G still had that thick ass charger, that really thick pin charger. And all my friends had Android. So yeah, if your phone is dying, you're definitely gonna not gonna borrow a charger, right? You can only download music from iTunes. That's crazy. You can't download music from the web. But aside from that, it was a really durable phone. At one time, I was really upset for some reason and tried breaking the phone. But yeah, it was very, very durable. Like I dropped a bed on it and it was still durable. Yeah, so I don't know why modern iPhones are not durable, but that iPhone 3G was really, 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 really durable. I think these days they have more planned obsolescence, right? And aside from that, you can't insert a memory card, right? So you're limited to the space, but then, oh yeah, but there's the cloud. Yeah, gotta pay for that cloud. So not really an iPhone fan. Ever since then, I have never really looked at iPhone as my thing. Even the camera pixels, they say iPhone cameras are great, but you can get much cheaper phones with much higher pixels, right? Maybe the color gambit or the size of the pixels are different, but higher pixel phones can be gotten. The screen itself has very low resolution. I think my girlfriend had the iPhone 8 in 2018 or something, and like it was only 1080p or something. My BlackBerry Priv was 1440p. Anyway, wow, that is a lot of side tracking. Uh, but my point is just read both books. But the mind control was not necessarily as sinister as it sounds, right? Differentiate or Die, very good book. It's about marketing and advertising. And if you just, he's saying if you don't differentiate your business, yeah, you'll die. So he just talks about tips and tricks about how to differentiate and how to market your business. Really, really good book. I didn't finish it, but I should. But even the little that I read was really, really good. Yeah. Now, those are the books I read a while ago. Like, I think all of those books I read by the time I was 18. Now, these are starting to be the newer books that I've read more recently, like mainly 2020 onwards. So, The Accidental Entrepreneur by Janine Alice. She was on Shark Tank, female entrepreneur. So, if you're looking for inspiration from a female entrepreneur, there she is. And she seemed very hands on. Like she was basically trying to say you shouldn't feel that intimidated by entrepreneurship because I don't really think she went to business school, but now she's like worth 55 million, right? Uh, she talks about, the importance of people around you supporting you. Like she married her best friend, which is pretty cool, but her husband, who was her husband, and her husband was very supportive of the business and helping her out. She had good mentors. I think one of the mentors, that was one of the things they said in 1 Minute Millionaire is find a mentor. Definitely you should find a mentor. Her mentor was the guy who started, I think, Flight Center, who was worth like 200 million, right? So I was astounded by her success, right? I want to pitch her an idea for a cafe. I want to first start the restaurant at some point. Then I'll pitch the idea to her. I'll get some traction. I'll get like I'll open like five, maybe 10 of them, show it has traction, pitch her the idea, maybe go for like a, I don't know, 70-30, 60-40 split. We'll see how that negotiation goes. Because she opened like a lot of branches. I think there's one point she opened like what, 200 branches in 1 year or something. So her ability to scale a business, especially in the restaurant industry, is incredible. I don't think some of them have scaled into Africa. Like, I don't think she's opened Boost Juice in Africa. And I think she closed down her Russian and China branches. And I'm not sure that many in South America. So, yeah, there's this guy he founded a restaurant in Kenya called Java, and he's now worth $100 million. Java is arguably the best restaurant in Kenya if you factor everything in, including price. He's a white guy though, he's an American. But I would want to learn from him, right? There was a bit of controversy, like his partner was found to be sleeping with underage girls, and like apparently for a waitress to get a job there, he'd sleep with them. So he slept with like hundreds of girls. But that was his partner, not him. Yeah. $1 Million Real Estate Investor. I'm still reading that one. There's so many books on real estate that I'm reading. I really want to finish the commercial real estate one. I need to get the Contrarian by Manny Koshbin. Go look at Manny Koshbin's channel. Spell it however you want. You'll figure it out. Google will help you. He has a book called The Contrarian. I think he does also invest in commercial real estate as well. Again, he's a person I would want to meet and have a conversation with. He's also an immigrant. I want to make millions with him. I want to learn from him. He's worth 100 million, solid 100 million, and he's really into cars. So that dream I have of all those cars, and that guy has like, I think 4 to 6 Rolls Royces, man. I only need like one. I only need the Rolls Royce Dawn. I would get the Dawn, get a S-Class Cabriolet, then the Bentley Continental GT, and the DB11. By the time I can afford these cars, they'll be really old, so I can get them really cheap. But the problem is I won't be able to customize them. I hate people who buy like a Rolls Royce with like black seats and a black interior. Like, there's so many colors you can choose from. You could literally have a rainbow in there, and you're gonna choose the black seats and the black roof and the. It looks like a Honda Civic or a Toyota. Anyway, uh, the Little Book of Stoicism by Jonas. I will not try and pronounce. I don't want to butcher that name. Very interesting book. Like, I haven't read many books on Stoicism, but to me it was an extremely great introduction to Stoicism. I think Stoicism is bullshit, but I understand enough about it to say that it's bullshit. Like, at least I understand it. There's some people who, because when I was young, I was into theology a lot. Yeah, so there's some people who criticize things without knowing anything about them. But the thing is, when I criticize Stoicism, I'm not just someone who's watched a 5 minute or 20-minute video. I'm someone who's read a whole freaking book on Stoicism. Like, advocates of stoicism have probably only watched YouTube videos about it. They haven't actually sat down and like read a whole book on it, most of them. So when I'm criticizing it, I'm not criticizing it from a place of ignorance. I'm criticizing it from a place of knowledge. But it's a good book on stoicism if you're looking for a book on stoicism. And there's some aspects of stoicism that I think are true. Like he says, life might not always end up the way you want it to, like not even remotely, but like tailor your expectations, right? So yeah, I was gonna give it the award for best book I've read in 2020, but it was a contender. Then No Excuses by Brian Tracy. Really good book. Good book on discipline. Brian Tracy's two books on discipline, Eat That Frog and No Excuses, are both very good, right? I was doing my last semester of uni when I was reading this book, and it helped. It like improved my discipline by 10%, because discipline is a fickle thing, like discipline, but yeah, it improved it by 10%. He really just tries to go through some of the excuses that people make and tries to tell you how to like overcome those excuses and to stop thinking about them. There's actually another book on discipline I forgot to mention, but I'll just, if I find it, I'll upload it. There's this book that basically says the thing with this, like, there are many books I haven't put here actually. There's Atomic Habits. I think I didn't put it here because I didn't like it. But they basically say that the key to self-discipline is habits, right? And the thing is, what the other book that wasn't Atomic Habits said is that when you're trying to form a new habit, you're literally using different part of your brains. Like there's a part of your brain that functions on automatic, right? So you don't have to think about it. And there's another part of your brain that you have to actively think of something when you're forming a new habit. So that's what he's trying to say, that to form a new habit, you need to consciously be aware. Like those first days, those first 66 days or 21 days, you need to consciously be aware when you're trying to form that habit. Like you really, really, really have to try, right? And you really have to overcome that barrier. But I have some perspectives on discipline, which this video is too short for. Uh, but basically, No Excuses is a good book. It's probably the best book I've read on discipline, or rather, the only book I've read on discipline that has helped. However, most of the discipline I've achieved in my life has not really been from reading books. It's been either from life experiences or perspectives I had, like perspectives of my life that changed, not really directly because of reading a book on discipline. 10x Rule by Grant Cardone. Uh, yeah, maybe this video is gonna be an hour or something because I cut the other one short. Basically, I hope it's not too long for the YouTube thingy. 10x Rule by Grant Cardone. So Grant Cardone has been under a lot of fire lately. People are saying, he sells like a lot of expensive courses, like at outrageous prices. So he's a very controversial figure. But regardless, he wrote a book on the 10x rule. What is the 10x rule? Just work really, really hard. As a summary of the book, just work really hard. If you're failing, you're not working hard enough. That's what his rule is. That's literally it. But he had an interesting perspective. Like he's saying, and I think he wrote the book before the pandemic, but he's saying it's like when sales are down, yeah, that's probably the time you need to market the most. So it's like if you're in a pandemic, people are thinking about how do we cut costs, but he's trying to say, like, if you're in a pandemic, that's really when you need to market your product, because that's really when you need sales, because if you don't take care of sales, your business is dead. I think he's also a salesman, so he says, the most important thing in business is sales, like sales and marketing, because if you don't have sales and marketing, you don't have a business. Like he says, the other areas, like he'd rather have like okay accounting, okay research and development, and okay product, but very, very, very good sales. I think for brick and mortar products, maybe that's true. I think for tech products, you'd rather have a very good product. I don't think a lot of products fail due to poor marketing. Maybe Skype, but I think Skype had limitations on the number of people you could add to a chat. But I think most tech products would fail because the product sucks. Because I was watching the story of one of the founders of WhatsApp. Like they never really went to like tech conferences or anything to promote their product. They just worked on the product and people kept using the product and it got better. But yeah, I get what he means. Like sales for a brick and mortar business is really, really, really crucial, right? Focus on those sales. Now, the next books. I really hope the YouTube will accept this video. So one thing I'd learned about in 2020 that wasn't a waste of my time is artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence is really the future, right? And basically, the two books I read is there's one is Super Intelligence by Nick Bostrom, and the other one is The AI Does Not Hate You. It's either The AI Does Not Hate You or AI Does Not Want to Harm You. It has interesting thought experiments when it comes to AI, but basically AI is the future. I think I'll do a separate video on AI. Like AI is going to take over anything and everything. Like it's just a question of when, right? But like 200 years from now, some say 50 years, 50 to 200 years from now, none of us are going to be working. It's just going to be robots building everything. And either the AI will wipe us out or it's going to be heaven. And yeah, the book talks about everything in between, right? I think AI is extremely fascinating because there's artificial narrow intelligence, artificial general intelligence, and artificial super intelligence. So, artificial narrow intelligence is like a YouTube algorithm or a chess bot, right? Or a checkers bot. We're getting good at building artificial narrow intelligence. Like there's some Chinese game called Go. I don't know if it's Chinese, I think it is. And the robot beat the best Go player and it used very unorthodox moves. So the best, like the best champion in the world. Like before maybe it could only beat like the 100th person in the world. Now it's the best person in the world. But artificial general intelligence is really extremely difficult to build. There's Sophia the robot. I think you've heard of her. She's pretty popular. Hanson Robotics. So yeah, AI is going to be very, very, very big. And if you're a computer programmer, you just need to learn how to code AI and you'll be really rich. Even Mark Cuban, Mark Cuban is the one who said that. So learn how to code AI and you're going to be very, very, very rich. But beyond that, it's going to impact all areas of life. Uh, The Success Journey by John C. Maxwell. John C. Maxwell is an amazing author and speaker. So anything leadership, you want to learn about leadership, just listen to John Maxwell. Inspired me to be more of a leader. So most of us shy away from leadership positions because we think it's too much work for nothing. And it's true, what's the phrase? Something about leaders eating last, like the first in and the last out, right? But his book inspired me to really try and improve my leadership skills. So, like, for example, in my diploma, I was the diploma representative. And when I went abroad, I was a unit representative for a second year unit. And that was a competitive position because we had to interview, and there were other people, and I was not the only minority there. We had Arabs, we had girls, we had, like they didn't just give it to me because I'm a minority. I had to compete against other minorities as well. So, yeah. He basically talks about how leadership is a process and people need to work on it every day. And he says how okay, not in the book, but in general, like the talks he gives. And he says that leadership is about who can add the most value, right? Anyone who can add the most value is automatically the leader. So if you just think about how you can add value to a situation, then you become the leader. If you're at a barbecue and you know how to cook, well, congratulations, you're the leader. If you're hosting a party, what is the host responsibility of the host? Add value, have the venue, uh, provide the music, and maybe provide the drinks and stuff, right? So adding value. And I think that's how I'd want to run my company, is instead of having dogmatic leadership, it's about who can add the most value. So if someone is an expert on something, I'll let them take charge in that situation. So it's more about situational leadership. So if they're an expert in something and they think we should do it, I would listen to them. I don't think it's really supposed to be either top down or bottom up, but I think it should be situational based on merit, a technocracy or meritocracy, right? That would be the kind of leadership I would use. But the success journey is where basically I don't necessarily agree with everything he says, but one of the things he does say is that he says that technically success is asking yourself the question, did you do the best with what you have? Right? So it's like, maybe you're a millionaire, but you could have been a billionaire. And maybe someone else is making hundreds of thousands, but that guy is like at his peak, is at his pinnacle. So he's really pushed far. And he's saying success can really apply to any age. Like, even if you're retired, what goals are you setting for yourself to achieve? Are you spending time with your family? Are you staying in shape? Are you staying healthy? Right? Are you investing your pension wisely? Right? So he's saying success can really be achieved at any and all ages. And it's really about doing what you can with what you have. Hence why you guys are watching this shitty YouTube video recorded on a Nokia 8 instead of like a 5K retina display with screenshots and stuff. And yeah, anyway, doing the best with what you have. That's one of the things he says, which I agree with. But again, John Maxwell, again, definitely top five, probably top three. For me to say someone is a good author, they have to have authored multiple books. That's what I mean, like multiple books which I like. So John Maxwell is one of them. Though I would say he's more of a best speaker. But anything that comes out of his mouth is worth listening to. Like any video of his is definitely worth watching. So look him up. Look up John Maxwell. A really, really amazing guy. Really, really amazing. I think I mentioned She Comes First. Why is it there again? I think I mentioned it. The E Myth Revisited. Yeah, it's about saying that people who are good at a trade aren't necessarily entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurship is more than just a trade. It's about the business side of things, right? So I think his method of categorizing people is rather simplistic. Like if you understood MBTI, you'd realize like the I guess the entrepreneur could be either the ENTJ, could be the ENTJ or ENTP. The manager would be the ESTJ for sure, for sure. The person for the trade, well, that depends on the trade, but an ISTP would be an example of a tradesman. Anyway, the point that I'm getting at is he basically says that if someone is making pies and selling them, they may want to start a business, but they don't realize, right? They don't realize that selling pies is a lot different from making them. Like the business aspect of selling them is different. And he says that McDonald's is not really a food company, it's more of a logistics company, right? So they have the best logistics, not just in terms of choosing locations, but in terms of how they do things. And he talks about how to build businesses, like basically from day one when you're building a business, you should build a business to sell, right? So essentially, with a business, okay, with a business, like from what I've read about business, not what they taught me in school, like you have to have an exit strategy. Like, how are you going to make money? So you either have an IPO, or you sell the business, right? But basically, you should still build a business as if you're going to sell it, and that's why you should really automate the processes as much as possible. That's why, like, McDonald's has reached the point they have robots making food, right? So yeah, like try and have things as automated as possible so that they can be scaled up. Like you have a formal training manual. Like I've worked at two places and similar jobs, call center, but one of them they had a manual. So people were doing things in a more uniform way and getting more similar results. So that's what it means, like having a business that's scalable, having a business that's automatic. I finished the book. I think that one was audio. Thinking for a Change is where he basically, not one of his best books, like really, I think his best book is. So I was saying his best book is 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. Uh, I don't necessarily agree with most of what he says, but I get the idea behind some of them. Maybe that's why I didn't write it down. But I think the things that he talks about leadership, like most of his other seminars, are pretty good. And he has a book called Failing Forward, where basically he tries to say that you should learn how to learn from failure and not let failure define you, and that success is really determined by your ability to handle failure. Like I think Amazon tried launching a phone, it didn't work. But look, Jeff Bezos at one point was still the richest man in the world. So you see how he handled failure. And you look at a company like Yahoo, not very good at handling failure, right? So the core concept of the book is like really learn how to handle failure, grow from failure, and not let it stop you. So I guess the only problem in the book is it's a bit of hype, because I mean it might not tell you how to literally solve your problems. You're like, okay, but if your car is broken, how do you fix it? It doesn't really technically tell you how to solve the problems. But I mean, if you're driving to work and you need something to listen to, because I think the audio versions of the book, if you're driving to work, your commute time is like 1 hour total, then it takes 5.6 hours to read a 200-page book at regular reading speed. And John Maxwell's books are normally very, very short. So maybe it would take you 3 hours, so like 3 days commute. Even if you're taking the bus, you can still listen to it. So why not? Why not? If you're binging Netflix and Game of Thrones or whatever, why not? Why not just listen to it? Today Matters, he tries to tell you how to make the most out of today, like whether it's health or relationships or priorities or finance. He's basically saying, like, if you want to get towards your goal, it's about what you do every single day. So that's why Today Matters. So, think of a goal and think about what you're going to do every day towards reaching that goal, and that's how you're going to get to the goal. So, simple book, but great concept, right? Great concept. Again, a bit of fluff involved, but still, I'm like, if you have the time, why not? Unless you're like a surgeon who's like extremely busy, but maybe you're taking your kid to the park or something, why not be listening to that book? Two very important books to read: Physics of the Future and Physics of the Impossible by Michio Kaku. So, Michio Kaku is a futurist, and I think the best futurist alive, where he delves into what the next 100 years will be like. Well, from the time the book was written, maybe the book was written around 2008 or something. But he says, like, for example, that everyone is like, where are the flying cars? But no one, right? No scientist said, no car company said there would be flying cars by the year 2000. That was all science fiction. So he says what makes his book different is he's actually gone to companies and he's actually talked to them about what they're currently working on right now. So he's not just speculating and saying, oh yeah, by the future, yeah, we're gonna have like all these amazing things. No, he went and talked to the companies and he said, okay, where do you guys see yourself in 10 years, 100 years, like IBM, Microsoft? And they're like, yeah, we think by this point in time, we will definitely have these things in place, right? So he takes an extremely conservative approach to predicting the future, right? Don't watch YouTube videos on the future like, oh, what 2030 will be like, or what 2050 will be like. They're wrong, they're wrong. Like, they're hastily predicting the future, like they're optimistically predicting the future, right? But Michio Kaku, he's conservative. He's like, nope, this will only happen if companies work on it. Like Ray Kurzweil is another futurist, but he was wrong. He said, like, for example, we would be like something about order includes online. Like there would be a way you'd be able to digitally like measure yourself, and then you send the measurements like directly to the factory and then they build the clothes or something like that, or wearable computers and stuff. So he made a lot of predictions that were kind of wrong. I mean, is an iPod really a wearable computer? I don't know. But if you watch some old videos on trying to predict the future, they talked about these pneumatic tubes where they would send food directly from the restaurant to the home. Like this was like, 1920s, 1930s. Like they really emphasized those tubes. And they were wrong. So I think Michio Kaku is the best futurist out there, hands down, hands down. It's sad that he's so old. He's like 70, right? He's the one who talked about, for example, he talks about gene editing and he talks about CRISPR and he talks about, he says that genetic diseases are easier to cure than viruses because a genetic disease, it's just the gene, like one gene or several genes, but a virus keeps mutating. The point being that if you have the cure for a genetic disease, it kind of works for everyone, I think. But a virus will keep mutating. He talked about how bird flu mutated into swine flu. And that's when I heard that, I was like, oh, okay, so yeah, it's going to take a while before they find that AIDS virus, you know. I mean, AIDS virus vaccine. And that's even why with the COVID vaccine, the virus keeps mutating. Like, that's the nature of viruses. So, very solid information. Physics of the impossible. Excuse me. Physics of the impossible. Uh, Now he tries to address things like teleportation. I don't know if he talks about time travel, but he talks about programmable matter. And he basically tries to say whether it's possible or not. And yeah, they transported like an atom across the room, so teleportation is kind of possible. Very interesting book, like just whether sci-fi stuff is possible. Both are phenomenal books. Both will make you seem like a very competent person. Like there are all these cool videos like Vsauce and such. I can't remember the other guys that talk about, oh, teleportation or whatever. Like it's just a 5 minute YouTube video, but when you read it in a book, like Michio Kaku has gone, spoken to these guys, and written it out, well written book. Yeah, so there was optimism. It's The Art of Optimism is written by a blind man, so that's pretty cool. Finance Your Small Business is exactly what it sounds like. Thinking for a Change, I mentioned it. And yeah, I think that's all the books for now. I've left out a few that I wanted to put. I'm trying to remember which ones they were, but maybe that's a good start for now, right? And if I remember all of the other books, then I'll put them. So if you're bored, then yeah, otherwise, happy reading, and I hope all your dreams come true and everyone becomes successful.